both sides of the conversation, family. We welcome you to this virtual space crafted especially for you. My name is Jada Curry, and I'm both sides of the conversation's marketing director and graphics design specialist. I want to take some time to ground us all as a community into this space we are about to open up in, so let's go through our community standards. Both sides of the conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation, so we ask that you all be respectful of that. We also ask that you be respectful of each panelist, host, and participant. We do encourage healthy debates and conversations. Don't personalize anything with anyone. This includes name-calling, bullying, trolling, or shaming. This will not be allowed or tolerated. Your perspective is yours. It is not a prescription. You do not have to agree, but show respect. These community standards apply to all of our live shows and any virtual spaces that we hold on social media, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We want to make sure that we are caring for each other as a community. This is our priority in all of our endeavors as both sides of the conversation. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's show and continue to stay in touch with us via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or all of them. All right, thank you for listening and see you soon.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Both Sides of the Conversation. I'm John Henry, Executive Director. Today is Thursday, so you know what that means. We're going to have another educational presentation tonight. We got a phenomenal king coming on here. The brother, Dante King, 400-year Holocaust author. He's going to come on here and give us a lot of information and talk about some of the things in the book and just give people some background and information. This brother has been moving, shaking all around, just everywhere doing it. And we just here glad to have him back and to help promote and support. I know a lot of community folks right now. There's a number of important community meetings going on. So I know some people will be chiming in late as, we are talking about dream keepers. We are talking about election stuff. We're talking about budget. A number of things are happening across the city and across the Bay Area. So as those meetings end, I know we'll be getting some folks who want to talk to Dante, ask questions, and check out information regarding the book. So we're just excited about that. Also, just want to say shout out to all of the community folks during this Black History Month. There has been so many new historic things that have taken place with Black males, Black females of the community, breaking barriers, kicking down doors, making new opportunities. It is phenomenal to see some of the things that are taking place this Black History Month. So we're excited about that as we push through this month, and we're going to continue to push throughout this year, highlighting our people and some of the things that are happening. There's a lot of work that is needed, and we're going to continue to be there to support it as community, organize, and continue to push forward. Happy Valentine's Day. This past week, it was Valentine's. We didn't have a hidden gem segment, and a lot of people were coming off that high of love. And a lot of our guests and everybody was reading, postponing for later dates as people enjoyed their time with their loved ones and their significant others. We had a number of phenomenal community events that we were a part of for Valentine's Day weekend, and people were just out having a good time. The weather was beautiful, and it was just nice to see a lot of love and people out just enjoying this time. We know the mask mandate has went down here in California. A lot of indoor places are allowing folks to remove their masks. Please go out and check your local places that you're going to go to and make sure that they're participating in. There are still some city and counties that have not lifted the mask mandate. There are still businesses in certain locations that are still mandating folks wear masks. So please, before you go out, go to any community events or go to any of these businesses, make sure you call and check and make sure if you need a mask or not. And I apologize for all of this. My allergies have been kicking up with the good weather and the wind, and I've been struggling, but I'll get through this part of the show. With that being said, we have some great news coming up for both sides of the conversation, a number of things that we're going to be doing to impact the community. As the Dream Keeper, one of the Dream Keeper Initiative grantees, we're going to have some opportunities for community, some stipends, some different things that we're going to be doing as we continue to have this narrative shift conversation and open up dialogue about what's going on in our community. We talk about some of the things that impact our community, and then our young folks who are incarcerated. We're going to do some stuff with them as well, so community can hear from our young folks and talk about some of the struggles and the things that they deal with inside this city and navigating our services and resources, and get some of the ideals and some of the things that they think we should be talking about and tackling in our community. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a couple of community announcements and get started with tonight's Educational Thursday presentation. Today in Black History, since this is Black History Month, on this day, the Black Panther co-founder Huey P. Newton was born in Monroe, Louisiana. Shout out to all the folks in Monroe, Louisiana. As he responds to police brutality and racism in 1966, Newton and Bobby Seale formed the Black Panther Party. The organization was founded and built on self-reliance for the Black community. At its peak, there was about 2,000 members of the Black Panther Party across the different chapters across the nation. In 1971, Newton proclaimed the Black Panther Party would dedicate themselves to providing social services to the Black community, and they adopted the nonviolent approach. Shout out to the Black Panther Party and all the work they did for community and continue to do for community, as a lot of the blueprint and concepts that they have put out, a lot of communities today are still utilizing those concepts. So, all power to the people, and, shout out to all of the Black Panther Party founders and folks that's a part of Legacy Keepers and all of that. And we're going to have the Black Panther Party Legacy Keepers on this Sunday. So we're excited about that. Anytime we in space with Dr. Saturo and Steve McCutcheon and a number of the Black Panther Legacy Keepers, always great to have them on board. Also, some news: the San Francisco voters yesterday, Tuesday, recalled the school board members after a year of intense controversy. This conversation is up in the air with me. I'm gonna just say this: I was very disappointed to find out the number of Black turnout when it came to voting. Black folks in this community, Black folks across this country, we are have to get a part of the civic duties. We're going to have to do our part in getting in the voting process, especially here locally. There's a number of issues that are coming up, seats being moved, things happening. We got to get involved because, again, the percentage, the number of Black folks in the Bay Area is getting pushed out farther and farther. And if we want to stay, we're going to have to coming together in solidarity, work together, move together, organize together, and get a part of these processes to at least have our voices heard and making sure that we're getting the impact that we need for our community. So as you all know, the 3 board members, they were removed. But my thing is, a lot of this came from an incident that took place at Lowell High School. But again, there's a number of issues with the San Francisco Unified School District that I have, and I think community should have. I think the whole board should have been removed, and I think, the way the process for getting these board members need to be changed. There's a number of issues that we still got to deal with. There's a new superintendent search going on. There's a lot of things community families are going to have to be a part of, and we just have to do it as community. We got to get involved. We got to start advocating for our youth, advocating for our community moving forward, and it's just some work that we have to do. The mask mandate, again, the counties that have lifted it is San Francisco, San Mateo, Alameda, Sonoma, Solano, Napa, Contra Costa, Marin counties, and the city of Berkeley as well. They will not require masks for people who are fully vaccinated, boosted. But again, there are certain businesses in some cities that are still going to be requiring certain things at hospitals and different things of that nature. So please check into where you're going or what you're being a part of, just to make sure that you have the right PPE if you're going to be attending those spaces. For the both sides of the conversation announcements, we appreciate the folks who've been supporting us. We are still looking for folks to continue to support the work that we're doing as we are continuing to build capacity here. Again, you can support us through the Amazon Smile. You can sign up on Amazon Smile, choose both sides of the conversation as one of your charitable organizations. No extra cost to you. I know a lot of people say, well, what I have to pay? You can just do your regular shopping, but if you sign up and choose us as one of your charitable organizations, Amazon will make donations to our organization on behalf of your purchases, but it won't be an extra cost to you. Also, our Giving Tuesday pledge is still going on to the end of this month. You still have time. Organizations, funders, philanthropists, people that want to support what we're doing. You could be a silent donor, get the tax write-off and support us. This is still happening through the end of this month. And, we'll have different things that we're still doing to build financial capacity. But all that information is on our website, on our social media handles, and on our newsletters. If you like to support, please go there to find out how to do that event. Also, for community events this weekend, happy to announce our Both Sides of the Conversation. You'll see we're presenting our Both Sides of the Bay Family Bowling Day for our African American Heritage Month. This is going to be phenomenal event. I want to say there's been a number of people who've been calling me, reaching out. Our registration is closed because we have met our max capacity. We are at the max. But I know some people will probably not make it. They signed up and probably can't make it. But as of right now, the registration is closed. A number of our sponsors, different folks that needed last minute reserve, we had to make sure they had access. But there is still going to be some folks that's not going to show up, and we'll be talking to those folks to see. But definitely, if you would like to be a part of the event, please reach out to me in email, and I'll be doing some communication with some folks who've been waiting to see if they could get on, and we'll let you know before the event starts. So excited about that. This is going to be a great family event. We are all pumped up. This has been a long 4.5, 5 months of promotion, trying to get this, going. Just want to say thank you to all of the sponsors. I want to say thank you to East Oakland Collective for their support. And all of the work that they did behind the scenes, pushing to make sure that this happened, as well as our other community partners and folks who sponsored, the Brown Bombers, the Rebels, the OMI Participation Project, SF Black Wall Street, the Bayview YMCA, YCD. There is a number of folks who just been supporting us. Wealth and Disparities. There's a number of folks that just continue to support us, and we thank you all. And I know there's been other folks from the sideline who's been supporting. Shout out to the Fillmore Jazz folks. There's been a number of folks supporting this event. So thank you all, and we really appreciate all of the support. Also, the SF Black Wall Street, the African American Culture District, the San Francisco Black Family Photo Day is happening Saturday, February 27th. At 1 p.m. It's going to be at the Mildred Howard Frame at the Shipyard at 101 Horn Avenue. And Both Sides of the Conversation will be out there as well. Also, after that event, we'll be headed over to 3rd and Drill. We'll be going to Big H Barbecue over there in the parking lot to finish the day's festivities out. So if you would like to be a part of that, please go to the San Francisco African American Culture District website, sign up, come out to this event. It's going to be a great family photo. What a way to do it on Black History Month. So we are excited about that. Also, the Black History Month celebration is happening with the Lakeview OMI. All my folks over there, the OMI Participation, Black Invest Black, all of our early educators. The phenomenal history event is going to be taking place from 12 to 2 p.m. It is free to the public. It's going to be at the Rec Center at 650 Capitol Avenue. A great event. I'm going to try to pull up for a second, as I got to get ready for our event. But, man, shout out to Maurice and the whole OMI team for all of the work that they are just doing, just making sure that our folks get the support, the resources, and just making sure that we have the festivities to honor us and our community. So just want to say thank you to Maurice Rivers and to the OMI family for all of the work that they're doing. Also, the San Francisco Department of Public Health Transgender Pilot Program is happening Monday, February 28th via Zoom. If you would like information on that, we'll put the information up on the screen or who to reach out and contact, as there is more work happening to impact our transgender community, and it's a great program. So we'll be getting that information out to community as well. Also, the Lunar New Year celebration is happening on Ocean Avenue, Saturday, February 26th, 12 to 3. As you all know, the Chinese New Year's is happening. This is the Year of the Tiger. A lot of events taking place. They're going to have a parade this weekend as well. It's going to be happening. That event is going to be happening at the Unity Plaza at 102 Ocean Avenue. There will be lunch for the first 400 guests. So what another great event that's going to be taking place. Also coming up here for our live shows, our next Educational Thursday show, we will be having Rafiki Coalition here. Dr. Mo will be back with Asher Black Doctor, as well as the Black Wellness Movement. They're going to be doing an Educational Thursday. And then Sunday, February 24th, I believe they're going to be doing another wellness show. If you all missed the previous one that they did, it was a great show, a lot of feedback. So looking forward to having the Rafiki family back on, Dr. Mo, and these folks, they've been just doing things this whole month to impact our community. So we want to say thank you to the work that they're doing as well. Before we get started and bring up tonight's guest, you have seen him before. First, I want to give a huge shout out to my sister, Joffreya Morris. As last night we celebrated her last night. She's going to be removing herself from the city and county of San Francisco as she's done 17 years of service. She passed her bar exam. She is now a lawyer. She is going to be pursuing her law work. She's going to be doing some work for the community. So we are excited to celebrate that. That is my sister. We've been, we grew up from like here to there. So just want to say we love you, Joffreya. Thank you for all the community work, all the services that you do for our communities and our families. And we're just looking forward to continue to working with you and just watching you develop as a lawyer and making things happen in San Francisco, and just the work that you're doing for our community families. And lastly, to all of our Black city workers, officials on this Black History Month, just want to salute all of you for all the amazing things that you all do, put up with, go through. We have a lot of leaders that are fighting for us, and I know sometimes it don't always feel like we get the best end of it, but it's nice to know that we do have some folks who are trying to do their part. It's a small percentage of us in San Francisco, so the little amount of folks that we do have, we have to uplift and support. And to our community leaders as well, there's a number of organizations that are doing things to impact that we want to uplift and show them some love and support as well. So I just want to say shout out to our mayor. I want to say shout out to our board president, Shamar Walton, Director Davis at the Human Rights Commission. Just want to share love and support to uplift them and keep them encouraged, as well as all of our community leaders. This is a task. Some people don't understand some of the things that take place. And, my prayers out to a lot of the families. There's a lot of folks dealing with a lot of things. And I just want to say, continue to pray for our community. Continue to pray for the young folks. Continue to pray for the seniors and the elders of our community. There has been a number of increased suicides in our community. And we just want to keep our arms around these folks in community. People, we are going through a lot. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of things going on. The energy has just been running around rampant. And we just want to keep everybody uplifted in spirit. And just want to say we love you all. And we will get through this even in the challenging times that we are in. We can do it. We are resilient people. And in solidarity, we all can walk and move together in unity. So with that being said, I'm going to close my mouth now. Enough of me. It is time to get into our brother, the King, Dante King. He is here today, coming back again to promote his book, stuff that he's doing and to educate our community. So with that being said, Brother King, welcome back to both sides of the conversation. Happy to have you here, brother. It is your time to take over the platform and do what you do best, brother. Oh, your mic is muted. Your mic is muted.
I just saw that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me back once again. I've been on this program a few times now, and I have to say I'm grateful to you for having a platform such as this so that you can bring information to our community, and you can also just provide a platform that is representative of us, for us. And I also know Joffreya, so I want to give her a shout out too. I really appreciate and all the things that she's done as a very strong Black woman in San Francisco, and her sister too. So anyway, as most of you may know, some of you tuning in and others of you that may see this, I recently wrote a book called The 400-Year Holocaust, White America's Legal, Psychopathic, and Sociopathic Black Genocide and the Revolt Against Critical Race Theory. And the purpose for the book was to amplify the experiences of Black people, both past and present, and really make connections into how the ways in which our society has been constructed through a white legal system, through a white political system, a white governmental system. It's normalized and a pro-white way of being, way of existing, which all of us know, but we don't necessarily think about it in those terms on a daily basis. But for everything from our language, the way we learn, what we learn, how we think, our thought patterns, our cultural value system, all of those things are created by white people and in favor of white people. But in addition to that, it's really amplifying how the role that policy and that legality played in all of this. And if you go back to the colonial period, through the 18th, 19th, 20th centuries, even into today, and really look at the nuances of the actions that different bodies took, such as Congress or the local court systems, the state courts, Supreme Court systems, the federal courts, it becomes pretty clear. So I'm going to share an example tonight that centers land, property ownership, property allocation, and opportunity that pertains to how land and property were distributed, and kind of some of the things that led to that. So, John, you're gonna, I guess, be a student here.
I'm learning, brother. I'm here to learn. Go ahead, pull it up. I'm learning today. I want to know.
All right. And then as we're going through this too, John, feel free to make any observations you have about how these things play out in the present and what you see it impacting. Feel free to contribute that. All right, so I'm going to start with
and I know Renata's going to jump on too. So yeah, we go jump into this.
Okay, cool.
All right.
So I'm going to start with a quick quote that is pulled from the Kerner Commission report, the one that was issued in 1968, because there are different versions of this, or iterations of reports that are similar to this. But the one that was released in 1968, one of the things that was noted in there, and I think this was noted by Roy Wilkins at the time, but it said, what white Americans have never fully understood, but what the Negro can never forget, is that white society is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it, white institutions maintain it, and white society condones it. So I'm going to go back in time and go to the Homestead Acts in 1862. This is a program that was legislated and enacted by the federal government, signed into law by President Lincoln. And so how this went, I'm actually going to read from slides. These laws actually prioritized white people. It prioritized citizens who were already here, but also it encouraged Europeans from Europe, northern, western parts of Europe, to come to the United States to claim land ownership. And so this program was intact between 1862 and 1976. So Swedish immigrants, Norwegians, Dutch, Danes, these people could come here and they could essentially get free land. So in 1860, this Homestead Bill providing federal land grants, right? Not land that people had to buy, but the Homestead Bill providing federal land grants to white Western settlers was passed by Congress, and it was vetoed this time around. But at the time that the Civil War broke out, because the Southern states had seceded and they were dominating Congress at the time, because the Southern states had seceded and the war had broken out, they were essentially their representatives were essentially no longer represented in Congress. Some of them weren't. The bill was able to pass. And so this law established a threefold homestead acquisition process. So white people were able to file an application, do what they called improving the land. So harvest crops, build a home, build a business. And then they could, after roughly 5 years, file for deed of title. If people who had fought in the war, so Union soldiers, they could actually prove that they lived there for 6 months or only lived there for 6 months. And then they could claim ownership to the property. So that any U.S. citizen, any white person, because again, at this time, only white people were citizens of the United States. And I think that's important to note. Or anyone who intended or had never borne arms against the U.S. government can file an application and lay claim to 160 acres of surveyed government land. So this is free land. So for the next 5 years, the General Land Office looked for a good faith effort by the homesteaders. What's important to note is that this program was in effect. It began in 1862, and it was in effect until 1976. These land grants were legal until 1976. This meant that the homestead was their primary residence and that they made improvements upon the land. After 5 years, a homesteader could file for a patent, right, submitting proof of residency and the required improvements to a local land office. And it was up to that local land office to basically say, approve or deny that the improvements have been made. So this is a picture of one. So you have, by 1934, more than 270 million acres of public land, or nearly 10% of the total area of the U.S., was given away for free to 1.6 million homesteaders. Most of them were established west of the Mississippi River, so in places like California, Oregon, Nevada, Arizona. All of this land, even North Dakota, South Dakota, Colorado, is being given away for free, essentially. When I worked for the bank in Castro Valley, and as well as in El Cerrito, I would do loans for people. And part of that process was pulling titles whenever someone refinanced their house. And many times I would locate properties that actually had these homesteads on them. And there was a special process that had to be done in order for people to refinance their homes if they had homesteads. The Kincaid Amendment in 1904 granted a full section, 640 acres, to homesteaders settling in West Nebraska. And then in the Enlarged Homestead Act, this essentially doubled the acreage from 160 acres, a standard 160 acres that was granted to predominantly white people, to 320 acres. So between 1862 and 1976, many white people, many could go to a land office, whether they were a citizen or an immigrant. They could file an application, didn't have to pay anything for the land, maybe what do you call them? Fees, that associated fees potentially, which in many cases didn't exist, and or if they did, they were waived in some instances. But they could get, between this period, 1909 and 1976, 320 acres of land. And these people started townships, which are now known as towns or small cities. They started businesses. Many of them started farms, which you see a lot of in the Midwest, and even out this way currently. So any responses or reactions to this, John, as you're seeing it?
No, nothing's coming through yet, but Renata's here.
Hey.
Hello,
How,
Dante. How are you?
oh, I'm great. It's good to see you.
Great to see you as well. Yes, yes.
Okay,
I
awesome.
want
Yeah,
to ask. I want to ask about that land, though. How do we get some of that land that they gave all them 100 acres, man? I need some of that.
so I think that's a really great question, John, in a profound, not profound, but a useful observation. Because how many times have you heard some Black person say, "Well, where's my 40 acres and a mule?" Right? And people say that because that's associated with a temporary land grant that was actually given by General, I forget his name, but it's a famous general. But it was a temporary order to field order 15, right? And what I'm saying, and what I need people to pay attention to, is that while that field order was temporary, this was federal legislation that was enacted that provided people with not 40 acres, 4 times that amount, okay? And then 8 times that amount. And white people benefited from this legislation. So this is how America is being made. And to the point that you just made, it's not like we can ever go back and change this. So at the point that happens, the damage is already done because families benefit from this type of legislation for the coming decades into the next century, right? The next piece that I want to go to, though, because that's focused on Homestead Acts, I'm going to actually quote from a few sources. There's a book that I reference in my book by Ira Katz Nelson. It's called When Affirmative Action Was White, An Untold History of Racial Inequality in 20th Century America. Okay, so I'm going to pull from this book. I'm also going to reference some information from The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, and also Not in My Neighborhood by Antero Patilla, as well as some other sources. I'm going to share a little bit from this documentary, Jim Crow of the North. So while that was going on, you move into the early 1900s, right? This is around 1910, if you will. And you have in northern cities, now we're talking about in northern cities that are established, and in southern states and cities as well, these documents that begin to surface where white people are drafting covenants to protect their neighborhoods from not becoming non-white, if you will, or mixed. They don't want them to become mixed. Hold on, let me share this. So I'm going to play an excerpt from a video. One second. Here we go.
And Renata, you could jump in and ask any questions. I know you got a lot of questions. Dante said you can jump in whatever you want.
This mob of over 100 people marched on an African American's house in October of 1909 to try to stop this family from moving in. The leading men of Minneapolis, as the newspaper called them, these are not the kind of people who want to be involved in mob violence. And they don't have to, because they have other tools that they can use. And there's this tool that they become aware of. It's called a racial covenant. And so just a few months after this confrontation, you see the first racial covenant appear in a Minneapolis property.
And this is where you first see this racial language.
Caucasians only, Aryans only, no Negroes or no members of African blood or descent.
100% of them were aimed at Black people.
In many ways, racial covenants, this is kind of ground zero of residential segregation. In the United States, and racism have a very, very long history, but this particular deployment of racism is fairly new. And this idea was really made material through instruments like racial covenants.
The law of the street the law, the courts working in consort to discourage Blacks from moving into white neighborhoods.
It starts out as private property developers, but eventually you have the federal government encouraging these racial covenants, demanding actually that any investment they make is protected with this kind of racial exclusivity.
When you can covenant entire areas of the city, it makes it off limits. That's pretty powerful. This is Jim Crow of the North.
Okay, so you've got that happening. The first racial covenant that actually goes into effect is erected in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay, and this is in 1910, and this is very interesting because you've got this Black attorney here, George W. McMetchan, who was by all accounts middle class, upper middle class, affluent. He was able to buy a property in a predominantly white neighborhood, and you've got all of these white leaders, the city solicitor. You've got this guy Milton DeShiel, who is he's also an attorney, and he's one of the neighbors on that block. You've got the mayor, Barry Mayhull, who is also involved in this situation. And so it causes an uproar. It's a strange situation which led the Oreo City to adopt the most pronounced Jim Crow measure on record. So again, George McMetchan, highly affluent person. This is a house that he moved into. You can see all of the windows are broken out. And what Milton DeShiel says, he says, ordinarily the Negro loves to gather to himself, for he is very gregarious and sociable in his nature. But those who have risen somewhat above their fellows appear to have an intense desire to leave them behind, to disown them, as it were, and get as close to the company of white people as circumstances will permit them. The segregation ordinance is needed to prevent this. So let's translate, right? So because we don't want Black people moving in next to us, we don't care how much money they have at all, we need to pass this legislation. And I think the very dire, most pivotal and significant point to amplify here is that none of this would have been possible if you didn't have heads of institutions, people in positions of power, going along with the program. So you've got white people who are in charge of organizations, who are judges in the courts, jurors, city mayors, city solicitors, administrators, who are going along with this all the way up into the highest bodies of government in our country at the federal level. So Edmund G Watson, who is a real estate tycoon, he begins to deed his properties that he builds. He's a developer. He begins to deed all of the properties that he builds with these restrictive covenants. And not only do they say no Negroes or Orientals or mulattoes or anyone other than white people can live here, but the properties can't be resold either. So this is Mayor Mayhull, and what he says is that Blacks should be quarantined in isolated slums in order to reduce the incidence of civil disturbance, to prevent the spread of communicable disease into the nearby white neighborhoods, and to protect property values among the white majority. So we still see this here today, right? Because white people control sociologically who fits where in the racial hierarchy, and when prices are going to rise or go down based on who's located in a neighborhood. So if Blacks are there, it's automatically going to decrease in value. That's their belief, right? And because they control the economic system that actually goes along with those beliefs, that becomes a reality. And so that's what he's saying. He's saying, essentially Black people, just their presence is going to drive property values down. You also see those same sentiments expressed in the redlining reports, which I'm going to show you when we get there. This is not about redlining. This is a part of what I call a piece of the puzzle that led to that made redlining possible, because you've got courts now ruling that these things are legal documents. So it says before 1919, municipal courts have ruled racial covenants unenforceable by the judiciary or outright illegal. And that's true, because in the 1917 case, Buchanan v. Worley, that case upheld a ruling that stated that racial discrimination in housing was illegal. However, by 1919, the court's view on the subject changed. In a ruling that same year, the California Supreme Court declared that restrictions or use or occupancy by deed restrictions were legal, even if outright restrictions against sale or lease to non-whites proved a violation of state civil code. So it doesn't matter that this is illegal. The courts uphold that these restrictions are going to be legal, even if racial discrimination is a part of them, right? So this nuance opened the doors for much wider restrictions of the 1920s. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. So what you have is both local, state, and federally sponsored affirmative action for white people that is unfolding throughout this entire process. And I think it's important to shine a light on that. So here's how these covenants read in San Francisco. This is one from St. Francis Wood. It says, limitation, occupancy, and ownership. No part of said property shall be sold, conveyed, rented, or leased in whole or in part to any person of an African or Asiatic race, or to any person not of the white or Caucasian race. So this is San Francisco, 1919. No part of said property shall be used or occupied or permitted to be used or occupied in whole or in part by any person of African or Asiatic descent, or by any person not of the white or Caucasian race, except that domestic servants, chauffeurs, or gardeners who are members of a race other than the white or Caucasian race may live on or occupy the premises where their employer resides, or with the written approval of the association may reside in such hotel, club, student boarding house, hospital, or other building as it may approve under uniform regulation. So again, Renata, any thoughts about this? Or you, John?
Well, I know this is talking about San Francisco. I'm from the South. I live down in the South, and so, it's a lot of that. It's like you say, even though those are the documentation that you're showing now is from then, it's a lot of it that still goes on.
Yes.
I can't recall. It was a couple of years ago that there was actually a neighborhood down in Houston that still has that in their deeds. Obviously they're not pushing it, but it is a predominantly white neighborhood where, there are a few minorities that move in there. So those, that was in there and it's still in there. They haven't really addressed it because, again, technically they can't force it, but it's still there. But there are a lot of neighborhoods, especially down south, that still try to push it. But I wanted to kind of flip it a little bit, because I know it's kind of ironic how at one point they were not wanting us to move into the neighborhoods, but now they're moving into ours. There's gentrification and forcing us out. So I want to kind of get your feedback on that part of it. How tables are turning, where now it's to a point where they're making areas not affordable to us. We're getting booted out of the neighborhoods that we grew up in.
Yeah, I think there's so much to explore on that point alone. And when you look at, for example, industrialization and kind of the evolution of cars in America, and how cars began to take flight around the late 19th century into the early 20th century, and all of a sudden, even up into the mid 20th century, like in 1956, you've got the Highway Act that goes into effect because white people are moving further and further and further out of the city, where most non-white people, and particularly Black people, were located at the time. And so there are, for example, enclaves such as Bayview, Hunters Point. You can go to like Tennessee and like North Memphis and other places. where Black people begin to be located in these cities, in the downtown areas are not desirable necessarily. They're desirable for work, but they're not necessarily desirable for living spaces. And so you've got white people who are moving out to suburbs that begin to be made for them. Developers make them exclusively for white people. You got Levittown, even out here in the Bay Area, Presidio Heights, St. Francis Wood, all of these places that are built for white people. And they can, as automobiles become more popularized, they move away because they can afford cars. They can drive into the city, but they can also get away. But now with the what do you call it? The evolution of like all of this modern transportation, and also white people deciding and determining that it's no longer environmentally friendly to have a car, and now everybody wants to ride a bike, or they want to catch the train or catch BART. They are looking for convenience, and so you also have in the very popular metropolitan cities people who are transplants, and so we have to make it convenient for these people to live here. These people are not here to stay. They're not going to hold up and buy properties and move out to the suburbs, and that's not even popular anymore. So it's the reverse. And if you've watched slowly over the last 30 years, especially here in the Bay Area, you've got this has happened systematically over time, where Black people are like, oh wow, I can now afford a home in Vallejo, or I can now afford a home in Livermore or Stockton or Sacramento, right? And to us, for those of us or those families who have not been able to ever attain that, or even for people who might have come from that but lost their homes, they don't own property, that's a big deal. That's huge. But it's systematically moving people away. So much so that right now in the city and county of San Francisco, we've got bus drivers that live in places like Henderson, Sacramento, and they commute to work. They drive into work. Many of them sleep in their cars between shifts, right? And now you've got places like Oakland, downtown Oakland, San Francisco, that are highly populated with white people. And this was not the case 20, 30 years ago. East Oakland, there are parts of East Oakland in the flatlands. White people have always lived in the hills, but in the flatlands where white people are systematically moving back in. And because of the value, and I talked about this, I think the last time I was on here, and I also talk about it in my book. Cheryl Harris, who teaches at the law school at UCLA, she talks about the inherent value of being white, right? Whiteness as a property in and of itself, and being the most valuable property that someone can have in America. When white people start to move back into these neighborhoods, all they have to do is start complaining, right? You've got people around Lake Merritt that have come up with a policy document that they're trying to push forward that can prevent Black and brown people from coming and communing at the lake. Something that's been going on for the last 40, 50 years since Black people have been in the city, right? Or 60 years. But now they don't want that to happen. So all they have to do is start complaining. Oh, these cars over here are parked on the sidewalk. Oh, these cars, and all they do is wreak havoc. So they make it very, very, very uncomfortable for Black and brown people to live in those spaces. And because they have the authorities on their side, because when they call the authorities and they talk to them in a calm manner, or they are emotional, they're automatically going to be taken for their word. It causes problems for Black and brown people in those neighborhoods. So it's policy oriented, but it's also culturally oriented, culturally facilitated. And it's systematic.
Yes, because like I said, I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana. I live down in Houston, so if anybody really knows Houston, and there's a well-known restaurant down there that most people go to when they visit, when they come down. It's called the Turkey Leg Hut, right? And it's like it's literally in the middle of one of our hoods. Like, I've been living in Houston now for 15 years, so I'm Houstonian now, right? So like I remember like our third ward was like the hood, like that was the place to be, and it still is. But it's so funny how at one point, like you're saying, they started to put policies in place to like shut us down, because that's like our hangout spot. That's our Sunday fun day. That's where we would go and chill, and we could pull up, and people in their cars was cruising down the street. Now I was literally there a couple of weeks ago, and I went to park, and on the street now there's a sign that says permit parking only. So it's like, what, permit parking? But I'm realizing as you look in the neighborhood, yeah, the neighborhood is now becoming gentrified. Like I still see I still see people that look like me, but then it's funny to see people walking their dogs and jogging, because that's not what it was 5 years ago, you know? And they're using like you said, they're putting policies in place to shut what we have down. And it's, like I said, tables are turned. It's a lot.
Yeah. And I was sharing with John the last time, because and one of the things I hope I get into is how employment opportunities begin to be created through federal policy for white people. You can think of it, and not even think of it, what it is white affirmative action. And these programs were created to bail the country out of what was called the Great Depression at the time, and to respond to an economic downturn in the economy, similar to what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, right? But I think what's important to note is that as all of these things are being done, you've got generational and multi-generational wealth that's being established. We also have to think of economics, what's going on right now with the economic system. And this has been always, but that is the new Jim Crow, because white people through economic policy, it's no longer legal policy, it's economic policy. So if you can make standardized pricing follow and or based on what white people can afford predominantly, what middle America can afford predominantly, I'm talking about on average, most of us are going to suffer. And think of it this way. Even those of us that get hired in comparable jobs as our white counterparts, I mean, if you even look at the statistics, you know that Black women don't get paid what white women make, essentially, or they get paid 90 to 85 to 90%. Black men make on average 70% on the dollar to what white men make in comparable jobs, or it might even be less than that, 60 to 70% in terms of comparable jobs. So I think we have to begin to understand the system of economics, that system being in this country, the way it functions in this country, being a creation of white people and controlled by them. It's based on what they think and not only what they think, but it's based on how things are going according to their agenda at any of supply and demand at any given time. And I was sharing with John the last time I was on here, the Paycheck protection program system, and how literally hundreds of millions to billions of dollars were shoveled out to these white corporations, LLCs predominantly, and they could go through a loan forgiveness program and have it forgiven. It's free money. But yet the people in the hood, right on the ground, they were happy to just receive a $600 check, or I think it was $1,200 the second time around, not understanding that people receive millions upon millions upon millions. And people say, oh, well, that was to preserve their business or their employees. No, not at all, because you didn't have to use it to pay your employees. You could use it for rent. It was a multi-purpose loan. It was just called Paycheck Protection. So I'm gonna go back.
That's a very important part as you go through this. I want you to hone in on that because when you talk about that, when it comes to the tax breaks, you even have it now where the wages will be the same, but at the end of the year, the tax benefits that they give to non-Black folks, to white folks, to write off in those exemptions. So on paper, it'll look like, okay, equally they make the same amount of money, but the tax benefits with the exemptions that they get at the end of the year, man, is what also builds that generational wealth, because you can't attach that to the state information. You know what I mean? So that's a good point, and that happens a lot And I'm actually talking to some people who are monitoring that, seeing, especially during this COVID, some of the relief stuff that they're doing behind the scenes when it comes to businesses, home ownership, taxes, even when it comes to reassessments of housing taxes, how they doing Black folks versus these other folks in the community. So that's a very good point. We want to stay on that too, because that's something, when we talk about these watchdog committees and these folks who are watching some of this stuff that's going through this Biden administration that our Black folks love so much. Better find out about these politics that you are getting.
We're not going to even talk about that.
I know. And you know what, to that point, John, I think we have to amplify that none of the political structure in this country has ever been in favor of Black people. Any and all policy or legislation that's been enacted to try and stop discrimination, that is reactive. Mm-hmm. That's a reactive circumstance. The things that I'm sharing with you all, this is proactive affirmative action for white people. Nothing like that has ever been done for Black people. And I think when I hear Black people say, well, Clinton did a lot for Black people, or, Obama or Biden, is doing a lot for Black people, point to what? These people are not legislative bodies. They are faces for the country. They don't legislate. So if we look at what Congress has done, which has enacted laws and policies against Black people, and then try to correct those situations, but you have the Supreme Court always coming in, dismantling any gains that are made. You got conservative Supreme Court that over time have functioned in that way, which is what I'm about to show you. It becomes very clear what's going on. Can you all hear me still? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to this. So I shared a moment ago about the zoning, right? This is Oakland. It says no Negroes, no Chinese, no Japanese can build or lease in Rockridge Park. This is where I grew up, right? So you've got total dominion and domination over all of our institutions. It's total white domination, white cultural domination and dominion, and a social formation and patterns that equal affirmative action for white people. So it's inbred into our psyche, into our way of being. It's what it means to be American. At the same time as the courts are ruling to uphold these types of decisions, you've also got city planning commissions that are start to prop up around the country during this time. Prior to this point, there was no need to really have city planning commissions because most metropolitan cities were in the process of developing. So these weren't really in effect or intact. So this is an article from the Chronicle in 1917. It says, Mayor Ralph yesterday presented to the Board of Supervisors a proposed repeal of the present city planning ordinance, together with another ordinance to take its place. The Public Welfare Committee will hold a hearing on the measure, and if the ordinance passes, the City Planning Commission will be named. The new ordinance, which is in many ways different from the old, provides that the commission shall be made up of the mayor, city engineer, city attorney, city architect, and 7 other members. The commission will offer suggestions on the improvement of the city and opening of streets, location of buildings and parks, disposal of garbage. And I want you to pay attention to this language. I'm going to go to another screen. Abatement of public nuisance, public nuisances. What is abatement? What do you think abatement of public nuisances means?
Removing something that is hazardous for the community.
Yes. So if you had 3 guesses to name or 1 guess to name who predominantly becomes the nuisances or other language that you'll see as undesirable or unfit, who do you think those people are typically referring to?
Black folks.
Non-white people and mostly Black people. You got it. So these bodies start to legislate or determine down to what neighborhoods look like and the types of structures, if you will, that will be built, whether apartment buildings can go in certain neighborhoods or whether they can't. And as you can imagine, most of these individuals, especially these people who are in positions, high positions of power, they don't want apartment buildings going into their neighborhoods. They want very large homes that they price at certain values to be built, right? And so it's about class and it's also about race, and you'll see that. So you've got these individuals who are kind of known as the fathers of city planning, regional planning or zoning. Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., who's a landscape architect, Harvard professor of landscape architecture, and then St. Louis's first planning engineer, Harlan Bartholomew. They come up with what we refer to now as zoning. They come up with the actual criterion. So they categorize every structure in the city according to single family residential, multifamily residential, commercial, industrial. Proposed rules and maps to prevent future multi-family commercial and industrial structures from impinging, from affecting single family neighborhoods, both by value and also by like environmental toxicity based on the types of entities and or agencies that might be established in industrial areas. They targeted neighborhoods covered with deeds which prohibited African-American occupancy by issuing surveys which identify racial identities of each building's occupants. So Harlan Bartholomew actually did this. He zoned white neighborhoods residential, and some of the language that you'll see is first-class residential or second-class residential, depending upon how old the neighborhood was and some other criteria. Rezoned African-American neighborhoods industrial, second residential, multi-residential. Designated land for future industrial development if it was adjacent or in neighborhoods with substantial African-American populations. So this is where the liquor stores went for the most part, bars, nightclubs, junkyards, factories, garbage yards, boarding houses. Essentially, these neighborhoods are synonymous with Black neighborhood, right? It also leads to overcrowdedness, and these neighborhoods later becoming characterized by white people as slums or ghettos or inner city, etc. It by recategorizing the neighborhoods as industrial or anything other than residential, particularly industrial. It later prevented FHA loans by banks due to zoning that had been done during this period, and homes that were may have been single family homes, but they were in areas that were regarded as industrial areas. Bartholomew was responsible for really relocating more than 70,000 Black people from places like St. Louis, Missouri to like Ferguson, right? And we all are familiar with that city because that's where Michael Brown was murdered. And that's where they've had a lot of problems as it pertains to targeting Black people. And every place has that problem, but that's been amplified more than other cities within the last several years. So this is what city planning commissions looked like back in the day. So who do you think they were zoning in favor of and trying to create healthy living, healthy circumstances in favor of or for?
Obviously, those that look like them.
You got it. And who do you think they were trying to do things against?
Any minority.
And did not care about. You got it. As long as they were not situated around them. So this is Atlanta. And Richard Rothstein, in his book, he quotes from this. He says, establishing colored residence districts has removed one of the most potent causes of race conflict. This is a sufficient justification for race zoning. So because white people were going after immigrants, they were non-white immigrants, and many times, really repeatedly through the early 20th century, through the mid 20th century, targeting Black people in Black neighborhoods such as in East St. Louis, in Illinois, in Detroit, in other cities across the country, you have events happening such as the Red Summer that happens in 1919, because they are so psychologically and emotionally charged about Black prosperity and Black people, in their estimation, making advancement and or advancing themselves during this period. They are going in and terrorizing Black people. I name an example in my book in Elaine, Arkansas, that occurred during this period as well. So these white people say, because we don't want them here and it causes a lot of disturbance, many people from our community go after them. They say a reasonable segregation is normal, inevitable, and desirable. All neighborhoods have to be protected from any further damage to values resulting from inappropriate uses, including the encroachment of the colored race. So they say race zoning is essential in the interest of the public's peace, order, and security, and will promote the welfare and prosperity of both the white and colored race. Not true, because it's not separate but equal. It's highly separate and highly unequal. So you've got in 1926, the Village of Euclid, Ohio versus Ambler Realty. And I won't go through the whole thing, but I'll essentially just refer to the slides. It says, it was the first significant case regarding the relatively new practice of zoning and served to substantially bolster zoning ordinances in towns nationwide, in the United States and in other countries of the world, including Canada. This is in the lower court proceedings. Ambler Realty sued Euclid Village, arguing that the zoning ordinance had substantially reduced the value of the land by limiting its use, amounting to a deprivation of Ambler's liberty and property without due process. In the lower court, Euclid Village moved to dismiss the complaint entirely, arguing that Ambler Realty had no right to sue in the first place without taking the issue before the Euclid Zoning Board as required by the zoning ordinance. Euclid argued that zoning is a form of nuisance control, there goes that word again, and therefore a reasonable police power measure. Finding that the zoning ordinance did in fact constitute a taking by Euclid of Ambler's property, the court stated that the ordinance was unconstitutional, being aimed implicitly, if not explicitly, at preventing the colored or certain foreign races from invading a residential section, okay? Thus, there was no reason for the company to abide by the ordinance's requirement. Euclid's motion was denied and the lower court decided in favor of Ambler Realty. So it would have been all said and done, but the Supreme Court stepped in. And in 1926, the Supreme Court agreed with the lower court's denial of the dismissal motion, but overturned the outcome of the case and sided with the Village of Euclid. The Supreme Court of the United States held that the zoning ordinance was not an unreasonable extension of the village's police power. So this basically upheld those racial restrictive covenants, not at the state level. This is now the Supreme Court. So this is racial restrictive covenants now become a federal mandate. They become a legal document based on this ruling by the Supreme Court. Okay, so all of those documents, no Caucasian, no this, no that, that actually, oh my goodness. Okay, let me clarify something. So that decision actually had to do with zoning. So that decision constituted that cities could zone according to race. So those reports, and I didn't show them to you yet. I'm going to show them to you. All of the reports that constitute, or the decisions that constitute that whites live over here, blacks live over here, Chinese live over here, Japanese live over here, that becomes legal based on this decision. So cities can now zone that way. The decision that actually upheld the covenants, it happened the same year, and this is Corrigan v. Buckley. This was a case that ruled that racially restrictive covenants of multiple residents on S Street Northwest between 18th Street and New Hampshire Avenue in Washington, D.C. Were legally binding, that it was a legally binding document which made the selling of a house to a black family a voided contract. So you've got within the same year, essentially both rulings that legalize racial zoning in cities across the country, and that racial restrictive covenants are also legal documents. Okay, so you've got federally sponsored affirmative action by white people for white people by the Supreme Court of the United States. So what's important to understand is that these don't just, these set the tone, if you will, for redlining. So in addition to housing favorability for whites and housing exclusion and discrimination for blacks, you've also got all of these policies that in entities, if you will, that were enacted, in programs that were enacted through the New Deal, which was a series of programs, public work projects, financial reforms, and regulations enacted by President Franklin Roosevelt in the U.S. between 1933 and 1936. It responded to the needs for relief from the Great Depression, reform, and recovery for white people, okay, through this period of the Great Depression. So through the Civil Works Administration, you got millions of jobs that were created for white people to put them back to work. And they're being paid through these public agencies, through private institutions. You've got a lot of manufacturing, a lot of construction jobs that are enacted during this time. Schools get built, Boys and Girls Clubs get built. All of these buildings that you might see in cities, ones of in older cities, jobs were provided for white people. So you've got both the creation of economic opportunity for white people predominantly, which most non-white and particularly Black people are excluded from, as well as wage regulation, the Social Security Administration, which underneath this umbrella, you've got programs like the ADC, Aid for Dependent Children, which later becomes known as Aid for Dependent Families and Children, welfare that is built into or developed under the Social Security Administration and is almost exclusive to white families for the first 25 years of its existence, okay? You got the Fair Labor Standards Act, all of these things. And what Ira Katz-Nelson says in his book, When Affirmative Action Was White, was that most, if not all of these programs excluded all or most Black people due to whites-only clauses or what he calls racially laden language and or selective racial enforcement, which we still deal with to this day. So you've got, again, federally sponsored and funded affirmative action for white people. One of the things he points out in his book, he says before 1930 and the New Deal legislation before 1930 and the entrance of the New Deal legislation, the employment ratio between whites and Blacks was roughly 1-to-1. After 1940, with all of this opportunity that becomes constructed, that evolves for white people, that is manufactured for them, the white-Black ratio is roughly 2-to-1, okay? One of the programs that were created during this period was the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which arose in June 1933. I won't go through everything, but what this essentially did was it bailed homeowners out who had defaulted on their mortgages. It provided them loan payment assistance. For new families, it provided subsidies on loans. People were able to get the loans at very low cost, very low interest rates. And one of the other things that it did is that it brought into the picture the whole idea and the program, I'll call it, of gaining equity in the home. So for the first time, white people could get loans on their home. And as they paid the loan down, not only did the homes appreciate necessarily in value, or not only did they gain equity from paying the loan down, but the homes, based on their appreciation in value, they were able to gain equity. So many of these properties were bought at cost. And I think it's important to understand what it means to buy a home at cost, because that means you're getting in at the beginning of the game based on what the developers have determined the prices for the homes are going to be based on their original value. And that's before people move out of their home and sell it and other people start to bid on the home to drive the price up. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was muted, but yes, it does.
Okay. So people were able to earn equity to put in the bank. You know, if they sold their homes, they could, if they bought 2 or 3 homes, they sold 1 or 2, that's going to send their children, maybe their grandchildren, nieces and nephews to college. All sorts of things happen because of it. But I also, before I get into this, I just want to pause here. What's the impact on Black people as all of this is happening? And I'm not just talking about the Black people that exist during that period, but I want you to think 1 or 2 generations. What's the impact if you are excluded from employment opportunity? You are shoved into public housing complexes that are like cages. What is the impact mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? And what effect does that have on you being able to raise your children in terms of how you raise them? Are you necessarily a positive, uplifted person because you feel affirmed, you feel like things are working in your favor? Or would you possibly be discontented or upset? And if that's the case, what messages are you communicating to your kids in terms of what's in reach for them? And you see all of these things happening. And if you begin to say, well, the system doesn't work for you, and that also comes through in how you function in the world, like that's what I want to get Black people to think about. What's the impact?
My thing is you know, I feel like this is a great conversation. I feel like, and look, I'm a whole mind up too. You ain't the only one who got the book.
Thank y'all.
So, but I think this is an important conversation. But I think it's a conversation that needs to be had because, you know, like they say, you don't really know where you're going unless you know where you're coming from. My thing is
Come on.
I know so many people feel defeated. That's one of the words I would probably think of as defeated. But I also feel like this is important because to me, I know each individual is different, but to me, that makes me work harder and push harder, right? Because you have a two-sided thing. I think some people will use it as an excuse not to excel. And you have others who take what they know that those that have come before them have gone through and push and work harder. I'm that side, right? Yeah. But you do have those, especially when you're up against the situations that you're talking about. But in addition to that, the rise, the increase in cost of living, you already have so many things against you, but having a hard time finding jobs because of what you look like. I remember a reading where they said that a white man who has a background will get a job before a Black woman who has none, right? And so when you think of things like that and you see things like that, it can be defeating. You know, you can think of, oh, I've already lost this battle. But go ahead,
but not. I was just going to say to you, sis, I think it's important for even someone like yourself that says, you know, I work hard, that pushes me to do more, because I feel like I function that way too at different times in my life. I mean, I was kind of built that way.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to recognize who opened doors for us. Mm-hmm. If we are to reflect on like who was in our path, and that if most Black people don't have people in their path to open those doors for them, that they are not going to be able to get those opportunities. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault at all. And I think on the other side, what you just do, John, you sent her a message. I think on the other side, we have to recognize that all of these things are being done for white people in favor of them. And to the point that you just made, I worked in HR. I worked in human resources. What I understand is that the networks that white people have extend far beyond qualification and merit. They extend far beyond qualification and merit. And so if you look at a website and they have a ton of jobs, let's say they have $100 jobs listed on the website, just know 50% of those jobs were posted with somebody's name already on them.
Absolutely.
Based on Bill and Sally and Jennifer's neighbor, uncle's friend, their nephew's cousin. 50% of those jobs already has someone's name on it, and the people whose names are on them, 25% of those people aren't qualified for the jobs. It's about who they knew. And because we don't, so I think many times we as Black people, not only have we had to hold ourselves to higher standards because the higher standards are real, but because we also hold other Black people to those higher standards as well, and it's not fair. It's not fair because if the roles were reversed and we could be mediocre or unprepared or less qualified and still get the job, we wouldn't be holding Black people accountable because the tables will be turned and we'd be experiencing life just like people with white and or racial privilege get to experience those types of advantages. So in my work, one of the things that I call on is trying to get Black people to understand it so that we can have more empathy and compassion for each other, to know that just because it worked out for John, or just because it worked out for Renata, or just because it worked out for Dante, or it looks like it is working out, it may not necessarily work out for John's little
Dante,
sister.
it's not working out.
Right.
Black folk, this is hard work. Y'all know, this is not easy. Believe me, it's hard work.
It is,
Right.
because like Dante said, unfortunately, we do have to work so much harder than everyone else. You know what I'm saying? We have to change our voice. We have to be careful how we talk. It's so many different things that we have to do. Like it's true.
Yeah.
Don't think it's all good, y'all. I work like a Jamaican. It's no sleep, no rest. I don't know if y'all want this. Dante, before you go on, I don't mean to cut you off, but before you go on, because I see comments coming in there. Kathleen is asking, do you see true equity in the future? I think that's a good question to ask. As you go into the next.
I agree.
No, this country was built for white people by white people. Are we paying attention to what's going on with the redistricting in Alabama? 75% of Alabama is Black, right? And yet they've shoved all of the voting into one particular district out of 7. They've put all Black people, essentially, not all, but most, together in terms of controlling their political power. Are we looking at what's going on with the law that's in Florida that basically says if anyone is teaching anything that makes white people or white children uncomfortable, that they have the right to sue? Are we looking at what's going on in Georgia, which you can't get out of line to use the bathroom if you've been in line for 7 hours to vote? You get out, you lose, you can't vote, or no one can give you a bottle of water or a glass of water while you're standing out in the sun waiting to vote. And then we say, oh, after 400 years of visible, it's not been out of our sight, visible, legal, structural, systematic oppression. After 400 years, we ask the question, do you think true equity or equality is possible? Absolutely not. Because one of the things that, and this is hard, mostly hard for Black people, racism is a system of benefit for white people consistently. It's not just oppressing you. It comes at your expense. Yes, it comes at our expense. But every moment of our denigration or oppression or marginalization, people are benefiting from that. So no. And do you want to have, let me say it this way, because I ask people, we live in a culture of status hierarchy, right? So even some of us Black people feel like we're better than the Black people that we deem don't have as much as us, based on a white normative value system that is based on consumerism and capitalism, right? So based on those standards, if they don't have the newest clothes or the nicest house or whatever, they don't get my respect. We pass by people on the street who are homeless, and we make up a narrative in our head. They're lazy, that something happened to them, they didn't work hard, that's why they're homeless, right? Do you want equity or equality, or do you see yourself on the same playing field or level as those people? I'll say this for myself. I know I do, because I've had to work at that. I've had to work at understanding the ways in which all of the things that we think are real, or that what we value in this culture, it's a delusion. It's a delusion. You spend your whole life trying to work to get to a certain point, and for what? At any time, all of what you have can be taken away because somebody suspects that you're doing something wrong, or that you're not supposed to be in a place where you're supposed to be, or, John, you're actually too good for your job. You're one of the uppity ones. We can't have that around here. Like it's a no-win situation. And one of the things I talk about in my book is white people's obsession and preoccupation with keeping Black people in their place. And even on the day-to-day, it's the way that you speak, it's the way that you wear your hair, it's the way that you dress that is wrong, because they set the norm. And if you don't dress like them, if you don't speak like them, if you don't act like them, if you don't talk like them, and I'm not the first one to say this, I'm just repeating it, then you won't succeed in white America. You will not succeed. How much longer do we have, John? I don't, as a time.
Go ahead, Dante. You got plenty of time. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I want to say, Dante, too, because I've been on a couple of meetings and stuff, and when you talk about the planning department, and like you said, everything is reactive. These folks have already made their decisions of what they're going to do, and then we get the left end of it, and they, where you can't do anything. But one of the biggest things that I'm hearing right now, in these meetings and in these social spaces, we talk about protective class. Black folks want to be labeled as a protective class or whatever. But one of the issues that I'm seeing is how legally they have looped affirmative action and some of the things that we fought for to actually use against us. So now when it comes to funding and support, you can't just say this is for Black folks no more because you discriminate, against everybody else, or the benefits, that should go to Black folks is not going to Black folks because they included everybody else. And I mean, when you talk about the school district, what took place on the votes, talk about what's going on holistically, where are we at? I mean, I'm watching the news this morning, they talking about how all of these white folks across this country and different folks are now saying we're moving our kids out of public schools, we put them in private schools, right? And one of the fathers was on there saying how he was trying to get his kid into this private school, how they have reduced the cost and different things and let the white kids in there, and then made loopholes so that Black folks and their kids can't get into these private schools, right? So I mean, when we start talking about the solution and how we move forward, I mean, when we talk about looking at what's going on, are we headed to a path where segregation is what's going to be best for Black folks?
Well, so that's a very multifaceted, multi-layered question that deserves like a very multi-layered answer. What I will say is no, that's not going to be best for us because we have segregation now. Segregation has always been with us. You've got gatekeepers of whiteness that transcend races, right? You got Black people who have benefited from being the token, from being a gatekeeper of whiteness, who align themselves with maybe progressive and or conservative agendas, and because they feel like they're the token ones. And I can name so many people, and I'm not going to go there because I could name some local people and they would be upset. But because they get opportunity, right, and they get in positions of power, they feel special. if you will. And one of the things, like if you go back and you look at the history of this country, and W.E.B. Du Bois points this out in his book, Black Reconstruction in America, he talks about how people of the mulatto, of the biracial class, who predominantly, many had white mothers and Black fathers. This is in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. They were prioritized as free Negroes in many cases. Most of who was represented in that free Negro class were biracial people. And they many times their fathers and the families that they came from, even though their fathers didn't necessarily claim them outright per se, they would make sure they were taken care of, such as was the case when I came on here last time. I talked about Elizabeth Key Grinstead back in 1656 and her father Thomas Key being one of the House of Burgesses. He made sure that she was taken care of by the person he indentured her to, his biracial daughter. So you have a class of people in here who have African ancestry, who are in this country, who have been in this country, and they've always functioned as though they are a step above the rest in terms of Black people, that they are out of sync with the masses of Black people. And those people serve to perpetuate the fallacy of equality. They serve to, because you can prop those people up and say, well, look at Beyonce. And by white normative mainstream entertainment standards, what we consider valuable and popular and successful, she's it. We can say the same thing for a host of other Black people, Oprah Winfrey, right? But in the grand scheme of things, if you look at it in its totality in comparison to Black success by white normative mainstream standards compared to white success and or non-Black people from non-Black communities who are non-white also, and how they are faring and how they are doing in this country, Black people are doing exceptionally worse in a sense. And so what I am also compelling us to do is do our work so that we can begin to decolonize our mind, create new value systems in our mind and in our head, because not everything does not have to evolve around adopting and abiding by and making realities out of the standards that we have been compelled and forced to accept. And I know that we all need money. We all have to live, right? But some way, somehow, we've got to start using some of our economic power for the people that, like the Tyler Perrys who have money, and creating Black schools so we can begin to educate our babies and take care of them. Because not only does, in terms of schooling and education and what knowledge is and that whole process is about, not only do those experiences provide opportunities for children to learn per se, but I know when I was surrounded by predominantly Black educators, Black faculty, Black staff, I was so affirmed, I was so uplifted. These people could relate to me. They looked after me. They took care of me. There's so much mentally, spiritually, and emotionally that can come from that. Mm-hmm. But we are at a war, and in my book, that's what I talk about in terms of it being systematic genocide. Our outcomes are worsening. Our lifespans are getting shorter as Black people. I can't tell you how many friends I've lost in their 40s as I've entered my 40s. These people are in their early to mid 40s within the last 3 years, and not due to COVID, due to cancer, inflammation in the body that's due to stress. That's all cancer is, right? And so we have our babies that are, between ages 3 to 5, young Black boys. They're the suspension rates in school and feeding into the school to prison pipeline. They know that young who's going to succeed. And it's not just about them being far behind or there being gaps, because all of that is measured by white educational standards. So how can we begin validating and affirming the skill sets, the qualities that our babies automatically develop with that are cultural, that don't align with that white system, right? We just have to if there is any hope for Black people in this country, it is not about believing in Black leaders that get elected in white institutions. That's not. We have a Black mayor in San Francisco. I respect her. I support her. I love her. I affirm her. But she said it best, that she does not have any power to change anything for Black people. She said that when she first got elected. She said, the bureaucracy that I am dealing with in this government has helped me to understand that government does not work for Black people in this country. She said that on a call with Libby Schaaf and Mayor Liccardo from San Jose, right? We've got a Black president of the Board of Supervisors who's the supervisor in a Black district, Brother Shaman Walton. Love him, right? But he has no major political power over that board that of people who will and can at any moment form a coalition against him. And let's face it, it is white money that runs San Francisco. It always has, and it always will. There's never been a time where Black people have had any significant or substantial political power in San Francisco. And I know some people on here might get upset with me saying that. It's too in your face, but it is the God's honest truth. And all you have to do is look at how decisions have been made. And it didn't matter whether you were talking about Feinstein as president or Willie Brown. Look at how resources have been distributed throughout that city and the decisions that are being made.
Dante, this is both sides of the conversation. We keep it real on here, man. We ain't with that. I don't care about people's feelings hurt. We gonna have both sides of the conversation. You know what I mean? We gonna keep it real all day. This for the people. If you don't like what we talking about, you don't have to tune in. Okay, but this is both sides of the conversation, and we gonna keep it real for the people. But the real pillars and the real people that's gonna move not only our city, but our culture is gonna take us, the leaders of the community. It's gonna take the community folks to come together and work together. But it starts with the mental health that we have to address in our community. We got to deal with the disenfranchised of the Black father, the Black family. It's a lot of work that we're going to have to do there to bring that sort of change. But when you talk about our light-skinned folks, the fair-skinned folks who think they're better than us and think they're not.
No, and I'm not saying that like that. So,
but it's true though that colorism is real. Let's keep it real.
It is.
It's very, very real.
But white people begin to prioritize them in terms of opportunity. That's what I'm saying.
And it goes back to slavery when the house Negro versus the slave Negro and who got to stay in the house and who, I mean, at the end of the day, it's real. You had, that's where that mentality came from. Those who got to stay in the shade and those who got to work in the field. And now that mentality continues to roll on into today. You do have people who feel like they're better than others. And I think that's one of the biggest issues when you say, why can't we come together, especially those that are in the financial means to do so? It's because they think that they're better. If it's not affecting them, then it's not a problem. It's only a problem when it's at your front door.
Now you see why I have a light-skinned deputy director, because I can't get in certain doors that she can get into, Dante.
I was gonna give you a compliment too, Renata, because you are a beautiful woman. And it doesn't hurt, but no, it's true. It's true. And I think for us not to also look at how even the nuances of something like that, right? How they can work against you if you're not a certain size, if you don't meet certain white standards or normative standards of attractiveness, right? Not everybody is going to be able to get through the door. You can have someone who, and I've seen this before, who is substantially more qualified than someone else, but because of the way that person presents, and now we're not talking about skill or merit, we're talking about fit, the right fit, okay? Because that person fit better on the team, they were given the opportunity. And I've seen that over and over and over and over and over again, and predominantly Black people losing out because of that. You get what I'm saying?
That's 100% real. That's why when I teach my young folks about getting jobs, I always tell them it's not about all that stuff you think it is, right? It's can you do the job will you do the job and do you fit in? Those are the 3 criteria that you got to meet to get the job. And that's like a lot of people, they don't get it, but that is definitely 100%. You spot on the money on that, Dante.
And it's not about do you fit in based on your ideas of what it means to fit in.
Right.
It's a do you fit in based on their ideas of do you fit in. So how do you meet that standard or criteria? And I'm talking about for the most part. So if we can get ourselves to understand just that little bit, John, and not be so hard on the people who have been burnt out, who are tired of trying, who have been defeated and beat, because those people do exist. And I'm going to tell you, I went to tears one day because I was watching the show, the documentary, Take This Hammer, when James Baldwin came to San Francisco in 1963. And you have a lot of Black men standing around saying to him, it's worse out here than it is in the South, because out here, the policies, it's that they're using the pen and paper to write policies against you. They won't hire you. They won't give you jobs. And John, I sat down with my dad, and this was just a year and a half ago, a few years ago. And my dad, I just asked him, I said, what was it like for you growing up in San Francisco in the 40s and 50s? And he said, it was hard. The white people were so racist. He says, I had to fight my way through school. He said, and then, when I turned about 15 or 16, and we wanted to work, me and your uncle started looking for jobs. They wouldn't hire us. He says, so at 18, we went out and started robbing people. Do you know how that shaped my father's trajectory and his whole life, John? He went out and started robbing people because he couldn't get jobs where he lived. So he got caught up in the system, and through his 20s, that is what he did, right? That shaped his whole life. And I don't think we understand, or we amplify enough what our people have had to go through and how it has shaped the lives of people that are right in front of our view, and we don't even know it. But yet, we are prone and addicted to shaping judgments based on what we think people have done or didn't do, based on how we've lived and experienced life. And it's been a hell of a ride and a roller coaster for many of our people. And I think one of the things too, since it's Black History Month, that I want to amplify is the fact that we don't amplify people like my dad or other people that were beat down by white supremacy and anti-Blackness. No, we only validate and amplify the people that survived oppression, people that became popular and or highly renowned contributors in society based on white standards. Those are the people that we uplift and amplify, only the people that we know. And we need to start amplifying the Black women who were subject to legalized rape based on statutes and judicial decisions that were passed by high officials within this country. We need to start amplifying their souls and their spirits and their existences and what they endured on our behalf so that we could be here today, and all of the pain and tragedy that they went through. But that's not what we value. We want to move on from the trauma. We don't want to focus on that because that's too painful. That's negative. No, it's not negative. It's reality. And it is a reality that was systematically enacted onto our people, and it's still happening today. I shared with you the examples of the young girl that was suspended because of how her mother did her hair. I mean, I think it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy that those are the realities that we are still dealing with and have to face on a daily basis based on what other people think of us and their political power to have the ability to enact policies and laws like that disadvantage us, that disposition and displace us. It's tragic, John. It's tragic, sis.
No, I mean, it's definitely real. I mean, that's what we're here for, both sides of the conversation. We're going to amplify, those stories. When we talk about shifting the narrative, you got to know where we came from and where we're going. And we want to highlight that stuff and make sure that it's heard, and I want to speak to my young folks who are incarcerated to talk about those very exact things that you're talking about, because it's happening today when people become desperate and don't have opportunities. We have people running into stores, snatching stuff, breaking into cars, doing a lot of these criminal activities to just survive. And we're gonna do our part to make sure we amplify that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that we need to highlight and understand, what's taking place and why some of the things that are happening. I think also educating our allies. And I think that's why your book is so powerful. When you go to UCSF and you go to different folks and help educate these folks, the bias and some of the things that take place is very, very important to let these folks know. But we know it happens, it's real. I experience it every day. I'm the angry black man. I go into these meetings and they go, John's just an angry black man. He's always coming here fussing and cussing, but I'm fighting for the people.
Me too.
And I'm making sure that we hold people accountable. And, we have to all do our part. But it's work. It's work, and it's tiresome. And, if we don't get the access and what we need to get done now, we are headed for some uncertain times. When you look at inflation and you look at what's going on in this country, the Fed's talking about increasing the interest rate, the type of financial impact that it's going to have on our community in these upcoming months, we are going to see some things that we have never seen before, or maybe we've seen, but it's going to be increased and amplified because people are becoming desperate. You see the level of intensity and tension in our community. You look at all of the freeway shootings. People are impatient. People don't want to sit in traffic. People are irritated. The level of irritation as money becomes hard to control and obtain is going to push people over to the edge. And I am so worried. I'm glad you said it earlier, Dante. The level and the number of suicide in our community for our TAY population, these young folks. I read 3 articles today. 22, 24, 19-year-old young, beautiful black males and black females committing suicide, all on the uncertainty of what future is heard and the fear of the unknown. Is going to take out a lot of people in our community, Dante. We got some work, but we got to come with some solutions.
Can I say though, I think we need to begin to reframe what you just mentioned as criminal. People going into Neiman Marcus or to Walgreens or wherever doing the smash and grab or stealing stuff, that's not criminal. That is a reaction to deprivation. What's criminal, and we have to begin to reframe this picture, is the fact that you've got governmental political bodies that have created policies, and both by the enforcement of the policies and or the resource allocation or lack thereof, have put people in conditions and circumstances to where they feel they don't have a future, or they feel that they don't have access to the types of quality of life or quality of living or futuristic opportunities that will provide them a sense of mental and emotional stability and comfort, okay? So people are driven to crime, and crime is a symptom of oppression and marginalization. And Frederick Douglass said it best, okay? He says, where you have a group of people who have been driven to believe that society is a conspiracy that has been designed to oppress them, neither persons or property will ever be safe. Okay? So when you put people in predicaments to do things to secure just the basic comforts of life and to provide for themselves, to survive, that's not crime. And we as Black people have to reframe what we are guided to see based on news stories, how this stuff has been framed for us by a white society. No, as you mentioned earlier, the tax codes are criminal. The way that the tax system is designed is criminal. The way that economic policy is designed and resourced, that's criminal. That's criminal. The fact that I was driving down 30th Street and I went down Martin Luther King Avenue, I think 42nd Street too, here in Oakland, and nothing but tent cities full of Black people. The fact that that can be happening in one of the richest cities in the country, that's criminal. because they have the money to do something about it, but because human life and because of because Black people, the lives of Black people have been devalued. They've never been prioritized. Again, let me say it again. They've been devalued in this country. That's part of America's value system. They don't feel any two ways about it. There's no regard whatsoever. They will leave these people out here in the cold to die and think nothing of it. And that's part of the systematic genocide and the callousness of it all. And so I think we have to begin to engage in ways that are very different than how we are guided to engage in the mainstream array of white politics and or a white value system. That, oh, it's about hard work. You can work your whole life and Black people have been the hardest workers this country has ever seen, and it's gotten us nowhere because we're not in positions of power to actually associate the value of our work with the full meaning or the full value of what that would mean in a white capitalist structure. So we are the hardest workers, but that doesn't equate to prosperity and or the highest standards of success by white mainstream standards. Black women per capita have the highest number of PhDs across the country in this culture. That does not equate to the economic standing or success of white people. Both white people with the equivalent degrees and those that are mediocre. It doesn't. So why
do they value it so much then? If white folks doesn't value it, why do we value it so much?
Because as we gain progress in our Black American story, we started striving for the things that white people constituted that we should strive for. And so in our whole ideas around becoming better or upward mobile, everything that we're striving for is a white idea or ideal. All of it. From education in the system to economic success to consumerism, all of it.
Traditions, all of this stuff that we talk about in this country, from relationships, marriage, how we go about it, we have constructed to a society of whiteism. So the only way we're going to fix it is we have to go back to our roots. We have to get back to the tapping in of our ancestors and our spirits and the nature and the things that holistically have empowered the Black race. How do we get back there, Dante?
Well, I don't think necessarily we have to go back, but I think what the initial step, which I guide people to do, is really reject whiteness and also reject anti-Blackness, which are the pillars, the foundational pillars of this country and all that's contained there. Because once we can begin to decolonize our own mindsets and think outside of these terms and really process these things so that we can see clearly and we're not constantly self-critical or judging of others based on these standards, we can have more empathy and compassion for our own people within our own community. And I'm not talking about the those of us that feel like we've done well, that are the Uncle Toms, right? I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the people who have been dejected and rejected and have not been taken care of. Do you realize, and I didn't get a chance to go here, I don't know how much time we have, but as they begin to develop public housing, 810,000 public housing units were funded in the Fair Deal legislation of 1949. You've got Black people who are systematically facilitated into public housing. And can I play a short video? This is here in San Francisco.
We love this Black History Month. We educating the people tonight. Go ahead, Dante.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, here we go. This is Bayview Hunters Point, a documentary on it.
But once the war was over, hey, go back to where you come from or whatever you were doing. And that's what they wanted Blacks to do. And matter of fact, they asked one of the Black newspapers here, Well, so the war's over now. It's blacks gonna go back south, and he asked him, was the Golden Gate Bridge gonna disappear? I said, blacks are here to stay.
But where were they going to stay? It was difficult for African Americans to find housing.
Because they had a law here in San Francisco. Most of the property was set up where blacks couldn't buy it. That's how segregated and bad it was here in San Francisco. So they didn't want blacks out here, period. It was too good for them.
As a result, many landed in public housing.
Housing authority would shuttle them in certain areas, and then renters would not rent to them, or buyers or sellers would not sell to them.
By mid-1950s, San Francisco's housing authority took control of the federal land and its so-called temporary housing, and built more housing projects on the Hill. By the agency's design, most black families ended up on Hunters Point, and later in Bayview.
And this is really when it starts becoming an exclusively black community on the Hill, because of the housing authority. I guess in 1950, the Hill is 43% black, and in 1960, it was 75, and then in 1968, it was about 97% black.
Mother had a job, and dad had a job, and we all lived there. But we were happy. We didn't have much, but we had each other.
Community leader Reverend Cordell Hawkins works with the DA's office. He recalls his years in the housing project that was originally used as Navy barracks. Today, there's a street named for his family.
At that time, I was the last child. I was the seventh child. And there's actually 10 of us. And then the other 3 came after we moved there.
The increasing population spilled down the Hill into the Bayview area's single-family houses.
And of course, as they moved in, the Italians started selling out. So they just bought up the whole neighborhood. And the highest homeownership in this city is out here by far, not just a few points above. But every black had an opportunity out there and bought a house if you had a job.
Blacks seized the opportunity to buy their own homes, even though businesses left.
You do have more commercial flight from the area. Businesses, especially on the Hill. The Hill at the end just has a liquor store. Probably racism has something to do with this, but a lot of it was that they couldn't insure themselves anymore, right? Once it became a black community, it was really hard to insure themselves.
At the same time, another black community in San Francisco was being torn apart. The vibrant working-class neighborhood, the Fillmore, became a victim of urban renewal in the late 50s, early 60s. Many blacks were forced out.
I can't do a thing. Nothing. And I'm just about to flip. Please believe me. They're going to come through, and then if they even ask you, what were you willing to accept? They don't even do that. They come and put the price to you, and then you got to accept it. I don't approve of that.
So what do you do when you don't have any control over the government coming in at any given time and saying, we want to take over this property, we want to refurbish it, we want to renew it, and we know that you own this home, so we're going to give you pennies on the dollar for it. You don't get to negotiate, and we're not going to move you back, but we're going to buy your home from you, even though you don't get to negotiate. And then all you can afford is the offering of moving into a public housing complex or the project somewhere, or totally out of the city. What do you do? When I look at that woman, she represents so many of our families who were put in that position and who were made to agonize. I don't know what the trajectory of her life was, but it would not surprise me if she died early from some type of trauma or heartbreak. Because how do you deal with that? How does your family rebound? And it starts a generational cycle of failure. And so we don't look at all of the variables, and there are many that come into play, such as not being shown certain homes in certain neighborhoods when you move in there. I streamed a documentary earlier today where I showed in San Leandro, California in the 70s, where the white people were saying, if Black people are going to move out here, they need to learn how to live like white people, or we don't want them in there. And at that time, there were only 84 Black people in San Leandro. They did not want them in there. And realtors weren't showing them houses. Black people would see listings published and they'll say, oh, we forgot to take that out of the book. That house has been sold. So it's because it's no longer legal to discriminate, right? But you can say that the house has been sold. That's not against the law. You can also say, oh, the offer fell through, so now it's back on the market, and resell it to another white family. Like, how do you get around that? Even the developers that were just going to buy the LA Strip Mall over, I believe it's, the old Crenshaw Mall. What happened to them? They outbid the white people that bid on the space, but they didn't get their bid wasn't accepted. And they basically said, we came in $15 million higher than the other bidder, and they still didn't accept our bid because they were Black. So it's not about, it's not only hard work or pulling yourself up or getting hit. Even when you do what it is this society tells you should be doing, you still don't have the same type of opportunity or benefit that is afforded on the other side. And I think that's the other side of the conversation that we need to be having.
Definitely. I have to agree with you, Dante. It is hard. That's a hard thing. That was a hard thing to watch because it's still happening. The unfortunate things are still happening today, because even for those that aren't getting forced out, you have those, unfortunately, that are selling their grandparents' homes, because they don't know any better. So that was hard to watch, but it's so true.
Did you see the people in Marin? Their appraisal came in $500,000 lower, this Black family, than it was supposed to come in at. And then when they removed all of their pictures from their home, they had their white neighbor stand in, it went up $500,000.
Yes.
It's time to go off the grid, Dante. We have to build a new nation of Black folks. We have to take over our land, and we got to learn how to live off the grid. We have to go back to the old traditional ways of raising our animals, raising our fruit, bringing in our own power and water, building up our own nation of Blackness. That's where we had it, Dante. We had it there.
No, John. Only if white people are, like Malcolm X said, white people need to give us the economic funding so that we can go off to some places and establish our own communities where we can be by ourselves. He was an advocate for separation, not segregation, separation. And he believed that the white powers that be owed Black people. And I absolutely believe that too. And the reparations should go on forever. It shouldn't just be a one-time deal, because we're talking about ongoing 400 plus years of systematic benefit based on not only exclusivity, but exclusion and denigration and dehumanization and taking advantage of other people. That is, there's no price you can put to that. And the damage is innumerable. There's no value you can put on the amount of damage that has been done. Yeah, it's a crime. What white people have committed against Black people is nothing short of terror, nothing short of a Holocaust, and nothing short of criminal. And I think we need to be very vocal, not only vocal about it, but we need to maintain that in terms of how when we have our conversations and we have discussions in our communities. We need to constantly be framing that as the foundation of the discussion, and then working from that point to talk about solutions.
The harm that has been caused to our community, no one can fix it. The heartbreak, the pain, the frustration, the loss. We got to keep fighting. We have to be resilient. I know this is a touching conversation. It's very triggering. Again, we got work to do. We have to keep pushing forward. I know a lot of people want to give up, throw their hands up and say it's never going to change. But I believe in the powers of us as people. If we continue to work due diligently, through all of these inequities and all of these issues, and we come together as one in solidarity and not oppress each other, not be gatekeepers to each other, not hold on to everything for the rainy day fund. The rainy day is here, community. We need resources, we need love, we need empowerment in our community right now. We are in a crisis, and we need all of our leaders, we need all of our community leaders, we need all of our families to come together in solidarity to help support and uplift our community, all of our educated Black women and men out there who are in psychotherapy and mental health.
Come
we
on
need
now.
you in our community. We need y'all to get off the high horse, come down to the community and help our people. Our people need mental health. Suicide is high. The amount of folks who are willing to give up right now is higher than ever. We have Black mothers throwing their kids off the bridge. We have mothers killing their kids because they don't want to deal with the responsibility of what is going on. We are in some trying times. This is not a joke. This is real. These are real stories that has been taking place over the last couple of weeks. More and more Black mothers are at the verge of losing and letting go. I mean, the amount of stories that I've seen of mothers killing their kids, and I know this is not normal. We are in a mental health crisis in this country coming out of this COVID-19, and we need all of our mental health folks and all of our folks who deal with this type of work in healthcare, bring those resources and services to our community immediately. This is a call to action, community. This is real. We are being impacted. What Dante have brought to the forefront today and highlighted what is taking place. We have to take this serious. We have to move as a unit, and we have to just show some love and embrace each other right now in these times and uplift our people in our community, especially say prayers for the elders of our community, the leaders of our community, as we are being hit from all angles. When I say the devil, the negative energy, and all of the things that are trying to take down leadership,
and
we gotta
John,
continue to pray for them.
Let me add to that. Let me add to that too. Not only do we have to address those issues, but the educating of it is so important. But not only that, not take so lightly when people are dealing with mental things. We are always joking. People are always posting. Even when people reach out for help, people turn it around and make a joke of it, you know, or they laugh at it. Even when it comes to when you look at celebrities and their issues. So if you see how people joke about celebrities and their issues, we at our level, we're afraid to come forward and speak on what we're dealing with. So that's something that needs to continue to be continue to be pushed, is the fact that we all deal with things mentally, especially now with COVID and all these things that have been ongoing. We've already had it so hard with our businesses and just families and all that. And now these with COVID and the separations that we've had and the struggles that we've had, it's been a lot harder. But when you're uncertain about who to turn to or who you can talk to or being able to be open, that's the issue. So we need to continue to push that it's normal and it's okay to speak on it, to reach out to somebody. Because I
was gonna say, you know, I am someone who I personally have dealt with suicide ideation. It's very real. It can come over you and put you in very dark places. And there are so many people who are struggling with it due to circumstances that they've been put in where they don't see any future or any way out. And I think you said it perfectly earlier, John. These people are not seeing any potential future for themselves, right? They'd rather be dead. And I think we need to think about like how severe these circumstances are that push people to criminality, that push people to want to kill themselves and commit murder. I personally suffer from suicide ideation. And I want to put that out there because there was a young girl that I also want to lift up and amplify too. Someone that I know knew her. She was the Miss USA, Chesley Christ. And she was considered high functioning and very smart and upbeat and successful, all of these things. And she went in her apartment building up to the 29th floor and jumped from the balcony and killed herself. That was earlier this month. And now that girl is dead. She was just 30 years old. And again, in the mainstream eye, she was thought of as someone who had it all together. So people, you don't know what people are going through at all. So don't humorize it. Don't, when people are sharing their woes with you, don't talk about how they shouldn't be talking about it, or you just need to be strong, or it's going to go away. It's not. And you really feel the impact and the pressure of it when it's someone in your family and you have to take a turn at burying one of your loved ones that decided to take that step.
Very real stuff. You know, Black women, Black men in this country are suffering in silence. And we need our community folks to understand, even the strong ones of our community, the leaders, the people that we think have it all together, could be dealing with issues, and we must continue to uplift them, support them, and listen, be an open hand, an open eye, an open voice, an open ear, all of that to our community folk, our families. So much of anxiety and depression is happening right now. The uncertainty of unknown is so real. And we must continue to just uplift and support. And Dante, we appreciate you coming back again, you know, with this information, enlightening our community, uplifting our community. And this is very real stuff, you know, and I appreciate you saying for our young folks that are watching to understand why are we where we at, how did this happen, and finding a way that we can pick through some of the things that have taken place to make it better. I believe there's a light, there's a tunnel, there's a future ahead for all of our community folks. There's a turn that is coming our way, but we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep fighting through this. It's unfortunate. We might not see it, but maybe our generations beneath us will be, but giving them the right tools to fight the fight. As I always say on this platform, for our community leaders, for the elders of the community, it is time to pass the torch to our young folks of the community so that they can continue to lead, continue to grow, and continue to push the movement of our people forward. It's too much gratification. It's too much self-ego that we have to let go in our community. It is time to pass the torch, because that fight that they've been fighting is now time to be pushed forward so that this new generation of young folks could deal with technology, deal with the racism, and deal with the things, and they have the energy to push forward and move the movement forward. It's going to take us all. It's not going to be one person. It's going to take us all. It's going to be a collective push. And, you know, we just got to keep standing together, bearing together through this. We'll make it to the other side. We have to get rid of the colorism in our community. We have to get rid of the hate. There's enough entities and enough systematic systems that are tearing us apart every day. So as community, we have to wrap our arms around and love and uplift each other in this thing that we think is prosperity. We have to really reevaluate what is the meaning, what is the beginning and the ending of what we believe our prosperity is as a community. We have to find out how we're going to function, move, and unite. It's not going to be easy, community, but we could do this. We can stand together if we just be open, have a little humility, empathy, compassion, and a desire to keep moving forward. And we will do that as a whole. Dante, thank you for coming back on tonight, my brother. This has been another amazing segment. You know, you family, you come back anytime to uplift our community.
I actually wanted to say, Dante, we want to invite you back for like a live version of a book club of your book. So let me turn it back. I'm sorry. I want to say that I started the first few pages, but our executive director has had me so busy, so I have not had the opportunity to come to finish. But he has been working me like crazy. But I'm telling you, I would really, really like to have a live book moment where, you know, maybe give the opportunity to people to read the book, get your book, read it, and we can come back and just kind of like discuss the book overall, like, you know, all of it, because I started reading it and I'm kind of like into it. So not kind of, but really, really into it. And I will say I'm talking, but I will say this because, you know, this is so off subject, but again, like I said, in order for us to know where we're going, we definitely have to know where we're coming from, right? One of the things I did a couple of years ago was I took my niece to the African American History Museum in DC, and I took her there for her to learn. But I learned more, I think, than she did, because I went to a private school, predominantly white school growing up. We didn't have Black history programs. We didn't have all that. I'll tell people, I despised my name. I hated my name when I was younger, Renata. I was like, why did they name me Renata? Everybody in my class was Emily, Susan, all these names. I hated every feature about me, my nose, my cheekbones, my hips, and everything that God has blessed me with. I despised it because nobody looked like me, right? And as I got older and I got to high school, I got to pick what high school I went to. So I picked, I'm going to go to this Black school. And I started seeing people that looked like me, and I started seeing all these amazing things. And so it was like, wow. But when I say all that to say, that's a part that made me, when I started seeing people that looked like me and started seeing stories, I started to appreciate myself more. Right. I mean, my parents taught me some stuff too, but it's different when you start seeing someone outside. We all know we didn't listen to our parents growing up. Right. And so, but that museum did something to me. Like, it lit this fire in me that I just can't even explain. And this book is doing the same for me, because when you learn more and more about the struggles that those have come before us, like I said, it does one or two things. We do kind of feel defeated, but then it also pushes us to be able to come out of it. And even though I do feel like that will never be on an equal playing field, I don't feel like that will ever come, because this is a white America. But I do think that when we do educate ourselves more and we learn more, that gives us at least that weapon to help us fight. So I
agree, sis.
I want to invite those to get this book and read it, and then we should have you come back and we can do this whole big thing about this.
Now, did you just pull a fair skin move on me? Now, did you just hear imply that I was an oppressor? I was a slave driver.
It's true.
Read her book because I'm a slave driver. You see how this stuff works?
It's probably true.
But I do want to say, while we're here, Dante, we support you, and we appreciate the work and the advocacy and the fight for collective art, folks, and we appreciate that. And I want to say, while we're here, to our both sides of the conversation team, I appreciate the dedication and the hard work from Renata and Mary, our team of folks who are committed to our communities. Okay, when we talk about our communities at both sides of the conversation, we're not getting into what city you from, what block you from. Okay, we talking about our Black and brown community all across this country, and I want to uplift our small but mighty team, because these beautiful people that are here and have so much humility and compassion and deal with all of my craziness. They grind for the community, and I just want people to understand that there's a lot of love behind the scenes that goes on. And I always tell my folks here, we are family. We always, go about that business that way, because when you talk about dealing with Black folks, it's about being love and family. Yes. And it's not always perfect. It is not always the easy road. But again, the overall goal is to impact our community, bring these type of segments to our community with education, awareness, and information, and also having the difficult conversation, the taboo conversation, the stigma conversation, some of the conversations in a lot of our buildings and corporations don't want to have. We're always going to be authentic. We're always going to keep it real. This is our space, a safe place for us to speak our truths and get the things that bother us off of our chest, and address some of the ills and the wills that happen to our community, this trauma that's been passed on for generations. We will find a way to break that generational curse, and it starts with talking about it. It starts about educating and awareness, and these important conversations. And this book that Brother Dante has put together for our community is a pathway to freedom, understanding, and how to build our community. And we're going to keep doing it, y'all. And we love all of the support. We love all the people who go out and watch the folks here on both sides of the conversation also go and pack those businesses. So Dante, after tonight, the book sales will continue to increase, because I believe in my both sides of the conversation community. When they see folks here, they go out and patronize those businesses, and they go out and patronize those folks to make sure that we continue to support our Black and brown businesses, uplift them, and make sure that we build that economical power in our community so that you can also be a blessing to some other people in our community. With that being said, I'm not going to hold people up longer. It's been a long 2 hours.
Thank you so much.
This is very, very important information. But before we go, Dante, you want to say anything before we leave? Shout out anybody, Renata. Let's do it now, and then I'm going to go ahead and close us out.
Yeah, I want to shout out all of you at both sides of the conversation, because you have been like family to me and just supporting me in the work that I'm doing. And it's not necessarily so much about me, but it is about the work, and it is about speaking truth. And to Renata's point, inspiring our youth and other Black people in our community to know the truth so that they can feel empowered and really be released from the chains of of mental bondage and not being so hard on ourselves and our children. I want to shout out all of the people in my tribe that support me. I would not be here if it wasn't for them. I have to say this: I love, and adore and edify Black women throughout my entire life. Nothing but Black women have taken care of me in very substantial ways. So I'm a product of that. And I honor and worship Black women. Everything from my mom to my aunties to all of my best friends who are Black women, to my teachers, mentors, Dr. Barbara Page, Virgie Maney, Rochelle Rogers Ard. There's so many. And I think Black women have been the backbone of the Black community, and Black men too in many ways, but Black women have had to bear the burden of taking care of Black men, of taking care of Black children, of still taking and bearing the brunt of an anti-racist, anti-sexist, or anti-female society and culture. And I want to make sure that is amplified. And I really hope that I'm still here on this earth to be able to see not only my work and the words that I'm speaking spread, but that of Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project, Dr. Ibram Kendi's writings around Stand from the Beginning. All of this needs to be engaged by the Black community. And if you can't afford these books, go to the library. San Francisco Public Library has ordered copies of my book. They have it. If you can't afford it, go there. If you really, really, really can't afford it and you want a copy, I have a few copies that I can maybe meet and give away or take to Marcus.
I'll sponsor one.
Oh, sis. Well, and again, I have a few that I'm gonna sponsor and give to people as well too. And you can email me at king.dante@yahoo.com. That's my personal email address, king.dante@yahoo.com. Now don't come flooding me just for a free book, especially if you can afford the book. But I'm talking about like if you really, really, really cannot afford a $20 book, okay? I'm willing to give you one, but because I want people to have access to the information. So anyway, thank you, Brother John. Thank you, Sister Renata, for your support and having me on. And I would love to do the book show I did. Just let me know.
Yeah, and we're sponsoring some books too for the community. If you want to get the book, you can't afford it. We understand discretionary funds right now is at an all-time low because of inflation. If you really want this book and you're having some trouble, both sides of the conversation, we'll make sure we get you a book. Reach out to us, send us an email, and we'll make sure that we get you a book. We don't want nobody missing out on this opportunity. So if you like to read, you're in a big book club, you want to use this book as a highlighted book club, reach out to us. We'll make sure you get the book as well. And Dante, I want to second that because I think a lot of times we don't highlight our Black women and let them know how important they are to the movement. And all my life, 42 years, it ain't been nothing but some amazing, amazing Black women who have supported, uplifted me, and made sure greatness within me has been instilled. So just want to say to all of the Black women out there, we love you, Black women. We cherish you. You are the goddess of this earth. We appreciate you and we salute you. We love you, Black women. We love you, Black women. All right, we gave our shout out to our Black women tonight and all the beautiful women across this country that does so many things for our communities. We love you all. Thank you for the hard work, dedication, and all of the family love that you bring to our community. We appreciate you all. With that being said, Dante, we got to let you go. You got to get a rest and get ready for tomorrow. Everybody else out there, we appreciate you hanging out. I know people are texting me, what is taking y'all so long? This is so long tonight. Listen.
Sorry.
You're in our space tonight. This is what we do. We don't always follow the timelines like CNN and Fox News. We do what we want to do here at both sides of the conversation. But this was very powerful. I mean, the text messages are saying that this was a great show, but just want
to I'll give you 5 books, John, and people can contact you to get them. I'll give you. Okay.
Yeah, we'll do it. And I'll buy 5 to match. So we'll have 10 books. I'll buy 5 too. So let's do it like that. But with that being said, community, we want to say thank you for watching tonight. Very, very powerful stuff. Happy to have our deputy director on tonight with us to be a part of this, as she always brings a different perspective to the conversation, a different level of elegance, and always making sure that she keeps me in line. Y'all know what I'm saying? She keeps me in line. So with that being said, want to say thank you all. This Sunday will be our next live show. We'll have the Black Panther Party Legacy Keepers on, talking about some of the historic things in the Black Panther Party, some of the concepts would have taken place. So we're looking forward to that. It should be a great conversation on this Black History Month. And then this Saturday, 2 days away, folks, the amazing both sides of the conversation family bowling day is going to happen. Please come out and enjoy the day with us. This is a family event for our community to come together, to network, meet some people you haven't met, shake some hands, meet some friends. For our young folks, we got some special things for our young folks, but you got to come. So we hope to see y'all out there. Thank you to all of our sponsors, all of the folks who have just been behind us, behind the scenes, didn't let us down, came through in the clutch. All of y'all, we love y'all. We support y'all. Thank you for having our back, doing the things that you all do to show appreciation in the community and show what that solidarity looks like. So just want to thank all of our community sponsors, as well as all of our community sponsors who support the work that we're doing in the community outside of the bowling event. I want to thank all of them: Collective Impact, YCD, Mo Magic, Rafiki Coalition, Health, a whole bunch of the Homeless Children Network, a number of folks who support us, our Dreamkeeper Initiative, the Human Rights Commission, to all of our community folks who just love what we do, support what we do. Thank you all for tuning in and supporting us. And tonight will be that night where you have your spirits uplifted. The ancestors are talking. Dante has woken up the ancestors. They have been calling them, saying, Dante, tell the people, tell the community what's been going on for the past 400 years. I think I heard a little bit of Harriet Tubman tonight. I heard a little bit of Dr. Martin Luther King. I heard a little Malcolm X. I heard a little Search on the Truth. I heard Dr. Charles tonight. Come on, man. Dr. Charles Drew, one of the best of the best. I heard from my ancestors tonight. Thank you, Dante, for an amazing presentation tonight, uplifting our community. I am moved. I am moved. You have put some fire in me tonight. I am going to be a wrecking ball for the community, and I will continue to fight. 400 years of Holocaust. Go get the book, people. Don't be stingy with the $20. We know a lot of y'all gonna get y'all CBDs. Make sure you go get this book while you're on your CBD.
Good night, you guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Have a great night.
Good night.